Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Bible study. Today we are in Psalm 137. This one's an interesting psalm because it takes place or talks about something that happens a little bit later in history than a lot of the other psalms, the exile in Babylon. We'll talk about the context a little bit more at the beginning of our outline section, but if you want the PDF for today, you can download it. There's a link down in the description. If you're watching this in the future, there will be a link to the physical hard copy book that contains all the outlines of the book of Psalms. Psalm 137, we don't know the author of this one, and once again, we don't have any New Testament references back to it that I've been able to find. We do know as far as the author, unless this is something prophetic, which I don't think it is, that the author must have lived significantly later than some of these other authors like David and like Solomon, because Judah goes into exile in Babylon a couple hundred years after David. So this is a later writer. Thinking about themes today, the first one is the sadness that is associated with Judah's captivity or their exile into Babylon. And then second, a curse on the people of Edom, the Edomites. And then one word to define, we've seen this one before, it shows up in verse 2, it's the word lyre. Not like somebody who doesn't tell the truth, but this is actually a musical instrument. So it's a handheld stringed instrument, kind of with a U shape to it. And it's similar to a harp in that the player plucks the strings to make music. Now, before we get into our outline today, I want to talk a little bit about the context so we can understand what exactly the psalm's talking about, because it's pretty essential to know this history to understand what's going on here. So about 400 to 500 years after David is king, the people of Judah had gotten so wicked that God actually allows the Babylonians to come in and conquer them and take them out of the promised land and take them to Babylon, where they were exiled, where they were captives. And they were captives there for 70 years before God allows them to return to the promised land and rebuild the city of Jerusalem. So the author of Psalm 137 is talking about the times when they're in that 70-year period where they're out of their homeland and they're over there in Babylon. And this was a dark time in Judah's history because it represented God, his patience wearing out with them and him allowing the Babylonians to conquer his own people and destroy his own temple and take these people away for a period of time. They were going to learn their lesson, or they're supposed to be learning their lesson in Babylon before he allows them to go back and kind of try again. 9 verses to look at today. I've got it in 2 sections, verses 1 through 6. Singing the songs of the Lord in a foreign land is our title. So the author of Psalm 137, as I mentioned, wrote about Judah's Babylonian captivity, and he wrote about the state of the hearts of God's people during those days. The people were sad. They had little in life to celebrate because they were prisoners, essentially, captives, and they didn't have any joy to stimulate making music or playing their instruments. The writer says that they had hung their instruments on the willow trees in Babylon, not for personal use, but because the Babylonians would often require them to play music for their entertainment. In verse 3, it says they would say, quote, "Sing us one of the songs of Zion." The psalmist remarked on how painful it was to have to sing the songs of the Lord when they were captives in a foreign land, not for the worship of God, but just for the entertainment of these people who had conquered them. And that pain was probably compounded by the fact that they knew that it was their sins that had landed them in Babylon in the first place. Now, with what seems like a penitent heart, the psalmist prayed that he would lose his ability to sing and to play his instrument and to play these songs of Zion if his heart ever forgot Jerusalem. Although exiled from Jerusalem, he didn't want to forget what the city represented: the place of God's presence, his laws, and his special covenant that he had made with the people of Judah. He was exiled from the promised land physically, but he wasn't going to allow his foreign surroundings to cause him to forget the God of the promised land. Section number 2 is verses 7 through 9, the end of the chapter, a prayer for vengeance on Edom. The Edomites were relatives of the people of Judah who lived just to the south of the Promised Land, and to some degree, the Edomites had been complicit with the Babylonians in coming and conquering Jerusalem and taking all of its prisoners captive, all of its people captive. Now, the psalmist knew about Edom's betrayal, and because of it, he speaks a curse over them. He wrote of the Edomites, quote, "O daughter of Babylon, doomed to be destroyed, blessed shall he be who repays you with what you have done to us. Blessed shall he be who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rock." So this is a very serious curse indeed. And that is how Psalm 137 ends. What can we now learn from Psalm 137? What can we take away from this study and apply into our lives? This is one application that I thought about. Let me know down in the comment section if you can think of any others. Babylon was a very impressive city during its time. It was probably one of the most beautiful and advanced cities in the world. Babylon would have been filled with all kinds of distractions that probably would have tempted the people of Judah to forget about Jerusalem and just to embrace Babylon as their new home, especially since Jerusalem at this point was a rubble because the Babylonians had torn it all down, and the prophets to Judah told the people of Judah that they were going to be in Babylon for a while. A lot of the people that were in exile were probably like, well, I guess this is home now. We'll just embrace this place, especially their children who were born in Babylon, who had never even seen Jerusalem. It would have been easy for them to think, I'm not going back to Jerusalem. I've never even been there. Babylon is my home. This psalm describes one man's fight to hold on to Jerusalem and to fight for the God of Jerusalem to remain his highest joy, as he says in verse 6. And we, for application, should be fighting a similar battle. This world is full of curious things, enticing things, comfortable things, enjoyable things, fascinating things. It's pretty easy, since we're born into this world, to get caught up with these things, to embrace this world and what it offers, and to treat it like, hey, this is going to be our home forever. But God tells us that this isn't our home. And we have to be constantly battling, constantly fighting to keep our highest joy in God, not in the things of this world, and in our promised land, which is heaven in the presence of God.